Assassin's Creed is the wayward son of the gaming family. Today I want to talk about how Assassin's Creed has changed over time, and I would argue for the worst. It started off as a genre-defining open world game that really changed the future of how open world games were going to behave, with its historical accuracies and freedom to the players, but nowadays it just kind of turned into something that it never was supposed to be. So let's take a look back of the Assassin's Creed franchise and find out where it went wrong, and more importantly, can it save itself?
Do not speak, not another word.
When I reflect back on Assassin's Creed 1 when it first came out, I have so many fond memories of running around playing as Altair, assassinating anyone that I saw fit. The story was super fun and unique, a battle against Crusaders was awesome, and you could always find them out in the field, and it gave you, the player, to control how you wanted to do that. Although the criticism with this game was the gameplay felt very repetitive and the missions were the same, I'm not going to argue that. What I think was beneficial of this game was that the player had more freedom during unscripted events. I remember always looking for those super crusaders that were all around the map and challenging them to a duel because the fights in that game were so cool. Plus, with the invention of the countering system, with the puppeteering way of fighting, the animation just felt so rewarding. When you countered someone and stuck them in the face, you really felt those kills, especially with the dagger dragging it into someone's head. You feel the skull crack and you hear every bone breaking. It was super satisfying to play that. And when you weren't in towns jumping from rooftop to rooftop hunting for your next kill, you got to mess around in the open world. You could run into platoons of different men and jump off your horse, draw your blade and say, I'm gonna fight 15 guys at once. The game itself made you feel like a badass, and Altair, although seemed to have a very monotone personality, I thought he was dope. The way he answered questions, he was so stoic about it.
What is it to transcend?
To recognize nothing is true and everything is permitted.
And then boom! Assassin's Creed 2 came out and it introduced us to almost everyone's favorite character, Ezio Auditore. Assassin's Creed 2 took the feedback they received from the first game about the game feeling too repetitive in its mission structures, and they changed how they were going to do things. The world was bigger and more beautiful, and moreover, you got a ton of more weapons to choose from. And while still trying to stay historically accurate, they gave us some really cool creative missions that we can get our hands on. How awesome was it to use those Da Vinci weapons and instruments on all of his missions? It was very cool, and although that probably wasn't what happened with Da Vinci at all, you got to take something that was kind of historically there and they made it their own. And what was really interesting about Assassin's Creed 2 is that it spawned a trilogy in it of itself with the Ezio trilogy. You got to see how Ezio changed as a character. He was no longer some super rich playboy guy. He turned into an amazing badass assassin by the end of his final game. And to see all these historic places that they created in-engine and they let you climb upon them, that was amazing because it felt like it was a museum tour in and of itself. And more importantly, they didn't change the gameplay that made this game what it was. You felt even more like a badass with the double-bladed assassination kills. They also left in the puppet system where you're always countering and killing guys, and you now had chain kills, so you can kill even more people quicker with better animations. And then they gave us Assassin's Creed 3. Assassin's Creed 3 takes place during the American Revolution, and this is a very cool concept. Once you dive into this gameplay, you want to go about your business, killing as many redcoats as possible, and they left a cool counter system in there as well too. So those animations you saw with the different type of weapons and traps, you felt so rewarded when you did that. They also gave us the added bonus where it kept track of how many redcoats you killed, and I tried to kill like 10 million of them, but I got nowhere close. But I appreciated the fact that they were trying to count what I was doing. Unfortunately, I think this is where Assassin's Creed changed the most after Assassin's Creed 3 came out. Now, I'm not saying that Assassin's Creed Black Flag is a bad game. It's definitely not. It gave us a new way of going about the whole world. On a ship, we're blowing things, we're pirates. That part felt cool, and it spawned other game franchises as well, like Sea of Thieves, but it started to change what Assassin's Creed was. Everyone knows that some of the worst parts of Assassin's Creed is what happens outside of the Animus. With the exception of Assassin's Creed 1, because that's when it started to ask us so many questions and we wanted to know what's going on. But aside from that, no one wanted to be outside of the Animus. And with the introduction of the gaming studio Abstergo Industries, it started to take the story in a way that no one really cared about. It really seemed like they wanted to end this franchise after Assassin's Creed 3 once Desmond dies. I know, spoiler alert, but at this point, you should be there. So I didn't feel like I needed to warn you. But everything led up to that moment. They were trying to stop whatever was going on with the Mayan calendar in 2012. And we got there, and we got, I guess, a resolution to that story. So to jump into something different that Black Flag introduced with its out-of-world experience was a little confusing. But I digress. I want to jump back into the gameplay of Assassin's Creed Black Flag. It was very cool to be on your pirate ship and upgrade that and go whale hunting and feel like a badass in that regard. But my complaint was how they changed things like the puppet system and the counter kills. This is when it all started to change for me. No longer can I just press kind of one button and counter kill someone that was attacking me. There was now more work to do. And normally I wouldn't complain about added features, but this one took away from what Assassin's Creed felt like. There was no more cool cameras when I'm doing a counter kill. I just keep having to mash square if I was on PlayStation until the enemy's life started to go down. And then he did an execution move, but that never really felt like I was doing the execution moves. There was no more cool cameras. There was no more custom animations. It just felt like, I guess I was playing Dynasty Warriors and then they would do a combo after it. But I give Assassin's Creed Black Flag my forgiveness because the game overall was fantastic. The other things they let you do in that game were rewarding, and it made me forgive the fact that I couldn't do those counter kills. But I promise you that I stopped playing for a little bit because I was angry until I jumped back in. And then there was Assassin's Creed Unity. I know, I can feel everyone's collective sighs together as I bring it up. But Assassin's Creed Unity tried something a little bit different. They wanted to add a better multiplayer aspect to the game that wasn't just a game of freeze tag. They wanted you to be able to play this game cooperatively with up to 3 other people in their open world. But the problem there is they seem to go away from that. They introduce missions specifically that you can only do co-op in, and you can't just jump in and out of other people's worlds. And that to me was a very strange design. For the most part in a co-op game, you want to be able to play the entire game cooperatively. I don't want to jump into random missions that we can play twice before I never want to play them again because I've seen everything they could do. People wanted to play this game with their friend throughout the entire story, but the problem was they didn't focus on that. They focused on some weenie character that I don't even remember his name, and I doubt you do either. Not to mention this game was filled with glitches, from visual glitches to game-breaking bugs that I don't have time to go through. There's other videos about that. I'm not going to harp on it. Now, let's take a look at more current Assassin's Creed games, the games like Odyssey and Origins. Now, these 2 games are really what inspired me to want to talk about this because they don't feel anything like any of the other Assassin's Creed games that came before it, and I think that is what is truly troubling. If these 2 games came out and had a totally different IP, I don't know if they would have been successful or not, but I can promise you that I probably wouldn't be as mad at them as I am. You see, both in Odyssey and Origins, it took too much of what Ubisoft was doing with its other games and created one of its more modern day problems. They introduced some of the things that are happening in their Far Cry games and brought them into the Assassin's Creed franchise, which is extremely questionable. These games now turn into a loot simulator where no longer are you kind of caring about the story, you're just kind of wondering where the next best sword and armor is, which makes you constantly pause the game and stop what's happening just to check to make sure that you have the best loot equipped. Now, the games that do this well, they do it well and they don't take you out of the immersion, but Assassin's Creed did not figure itself out. It just made you want to pull your hair out and wonder why every person you have to kill, you have to check their loot because your stupid sword is now hitting them and blood's flying everywhere and you don't ever feel like you're killing them. And that's why I want to talk about my first point that made me super annoyed with these games is they took away everything that made the original Assassin's Creed. There's no countering. Sometimes you can get a skill that lets you do it, but it's just a move that stops the enemy's attack. No longer can you press one button, hit them, and then he goes and stabs him in his neck or something and you get a cool animation. They took away from all of that. And plus the look on the characters' faces while everything is happening, they really just kind of feel like an NPC, and I know they are, but there was just no life form in these characters. Once they introduce photo mode, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. There'll be a moment where after I've knocked someone to the ground or something, I'll go to stab them with a spear, and the look in the character's face is like, oh man, I can't believe that this is happening to me. And this now leads me to my next point. Assassin's Creed always wanted to be historically accurate. There's a reason why Altair did not have his crossbow that we saw in the cutscene as in gameplay, because they thought that was not historically accurate and they did not want to portray that. Smash cut to Odyssey and Origins where you're fighting Medusas and Anubis and you have flaming horses and all their DLC that they wanted to pull extra money out of you to put in their game, made it so unhistorically accurate, which made me question everything they did prior. That's why I feel like the game just wasn't called Assassin's Creed. It could have been called anything else, Odyssey or Origins. There would have been so much more forgiveness and there would have been less of an expectation for them to do what they did in the previous games and bring it here. Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey just feel like they don't have a soul. Once you go about your business and you conquer a certain part of the land and you get whatever loot that was supposed to be there, there's no reason for you to want to go back and clear that area. If you killed the centurion that was there or you did whatever you wanted to there, you don't have to go back there. There's no reason to do it. Not even the gameplay is fun enough to make you want to go back to those areas. And that's the biggest problem. When you take away the creativity out of these games, there's no reason for me to go back in there once I get your loot. And here's my biggest question for the Assassin's Creed franchise. Everything you did outside of the Animus, I just forgot about. After Desmond's story, there was no point to it. So why are you taking me out of the game to experience the nonsense outside of this world? Everyone thought you were going to take the Assassin's Creed formula, mix it with some of the gunplay that was introduced in Assassin's Creed 2 and 3, and give us some open world, modern day Assassin's Creed stuff. But instead, it seemed like they kind of got scared of where that can go. Or maybe they realized that the engine that they made the game upon it was not built for it to become a modern shooter, because people nowadays would question why there was melee combat in something like 2020 if it's based on 2020. So now we're just kind of left where the next Assassin's Creed game can just take place in a time period. People now want Greeks, people want samurais, people want shinobi. I'm here to say that that doesn't really matter. If they don't have the soul left of their game, there's no point to continuing. They can change it and change it and change it again, but it's still no longer Assassin's Creed. So I beg you, please return Assassin's Creed back to its former glory. Give us the ability to have the puppeteering system with the counters and the animations. If you do that right and have a baseline, you can introduce things along the way. You can put battleships, you could put mechs, you could put whatever you want in there, but please keep Assassin's Creed how it was always meant to be played.
I send you, my best man, to complete a mission more important than any that has come before. And you return to me with nothing but apologies and excuses.
That's it for today's episode of Downloadable Content. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see what you guys think about the Assassin's Creed franchise. Am I wrong? Is it going in a better direction? And do I just have nostalgia blinders for the past thinking these games are better? I want to hear from you. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. If you're new, please subscribe, and even if you're not new, leave a comment. I want to sift through them. I'm Rob from Downloadable Content. Thanks for stopping by, and I will see you in the next video.